Welcome to our webinar, Protecting Western Wildlife from Trophy Hunting and Killing Contests. My name is Jill Fritz, and I'm a director in the Wildlife Protection Department at the Humane Society of the United States. We understand that everyone is really focused on COVID-19 right now, so we really appreciate you taking time out to join our webinar today. We hope that everyone is home safe and staying healthy. While this presentation can be useful to anyone looking to end trophy hunting and wildlife killing contests in their state, we will be focusing much of the discussion today on examples from Colorado. And so if you're outside Colorado and you have questions about some of these practices that are going on in your own state, please feel free to contact your HSUS state director or contact us directly at wildlife@humanesociety.org. I want to quickly add, we've been having a little bit of trouble with the screen on our webinar showing up blurry to some viewers, and I apologize in advance for that. But please note that we will have the recording of the webinar, non-blurry recording, available very soon, hopefully by tomorrow. So first, a little bit about the Humane Society of the United States. Our mission is to fight for all animals. And we do that by taking on the big fights, but we can't do it without you, which is why we're having this webinar today. Here are the presenters that you'll hear from on tonight's webinar, from the HSUS State Affairs and Wildlife Protection Departments. So today we'll give you the basics of the issues, and then we'll refer you to our resources so you can take action. Our goal is to help you to be motivated to take action in your states. During our webinar, please type any questions that you might think of into the Q&A box on your screen, and then we'll do our best to get your questions answered at the end of our presentation. Also, please be advised there will be some graphic and disturbing images and video in this presentation. Now I'll turn it over to Sam Haggio to talk about trophy hunting.
Hi everybody, I'm Sam Haggio. I'm a director in the Wildlife Protection Department with the HSUS. And I'm going to start by just talking about some of the basics about trophy hunting and then get into a little bit more specific about Colorado. So first and foremost, what do we mean when we're saying trophy hunting? At the Humane Society of the United States, we've defined trophy hunting as the practice of killing or pursuing with the intent to kill wild animals where the primary motivation is to obtain the animal parts. So their heads, hides, claws, or even the whole stuffed animal for display and for bragging rights and prizes, but not for subsistence and food. So more than 100,000 of America's native carnivores, which includes black bears, grizzly bears, wolves, mountain lions, bobcats, coyotes, and foxes, are killed by trophy hunters and trappers every year in the United States. And those are the species that will be the focus of this presentation. Although the root cause of trophy hunting is typically the desire of the hunters to obtain trophies for bragging rights, the trophy hunting of wolves and mountain lions is also often motivated by misplaced fear, a misunderstanding of their role in healthy ecosystems, and misguided outright hatred. We also think it's important to note that the HSUS is not an anti-hunting organization, as some of our opponents like to call us. We don't take a position on hunting in general, but we do, however, oppose trophy hunting, wildlife killing contests, and additional actions that we consider to be the most egregious forms of killing and exploitation of wildlife, both in the United States and across the world. So the map on your screen, and hopefully it's not too blurry for you guys, it shows which native carnivores are trophy hunted in each state. So you can see in Colorado, for example, mountain lions, black bears, and bobcats are all trophy hunted. And then if you look just to the north, in Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho, gray wolves are also trophy hunted in addition to the same species in Colorado. And then trophy hunted animals are killed using especially unfair and egregious methods and modern technology that give trophy hunters unfair advantages. So for example, pastries and other foods, rotting meat, whatnot, may be used as bait to lure wild animals for those waiting in a nearby blind for an easy kill. In some states, indiscriminate and inhumane steel-jawed leg hold traps or wire neck or foot snares are also used to catch and hold those trophy animals until they're either shot, stomped, or bludgeoned to death. Many of these animals are also targeted in wildlife killing contests, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Thankfully, many of the most egregious killing methods are no longer permitted for recreational hunting in Colorado, such as the use of bait to kill bears and the use of certain traps, which have been outlawed thanks to ballot measures in the state. But however, they are still used in states throughout the West. And additionally, in Colorado and other Western states, trophy hunters are allowed to use hounds in order to track down and easily kill native carnivores. So that's the photo that you see on the screen. It's hounds hunting mountain lions. And trophy hunters and guides often use packs of radio-collared hounds to pursue the animals until the exhausted and frightened wildlife either turns to fight the hound or they seek refuge in a tree where they're then shot at point-blank range. In Colorado, hounds cannot be used to hunt bears, again, thanks to a ballot measure, but they can be used for other species such as mountain lions and bobcats. And then to make matters worse, the effect of trophy hunting far exceeds the pressures on native carnivore populations than what would occur in nature, such as disease, old age, conflicts with other animals, and starvation. This is because the trophy hunters often target adult breeding animals, which disrupts their social structure and then can lead to indirect effects such as increased infanticide, which is the killing of young offspring. And then in addition to their direct killing by trophy hunters and trappers, our native carnivores face other threats, which includes the loss of habitat and their prey species, all of which is compounded by climate change. So now I'll dive a little bit deeper into trophy hunting in Colorado specifically. So right in Colorado, over 500 mountain lions were killed during the 2018 to 2019 hunting season. And trophy hunters in Colorado typically use packs of hunting hounds to locate and bay mountain lions, such as by running them up a tree or cornering them on a rock ledge for an easy kill. The state wildlife agency, which is called Colorado Parks and Wildlife, is actually currently proposing some changes to mountain lion hunting, which Haley will talk about later on in this presentation. And black bears are also killed in Colorado. So nearly 1,400 black bears were trophy hunted in the state in 2019. And while Colorado Parks and Wildlife doesn't allow hunters to use hounds or bait to kill bears, again, via ballot measure, like I mentioned before, they do allow practically an unlimited number of bear hunting licenses. So just last month, the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission, which is the governing body which oversees the wildlife regulations in the state, they approved the expansion of unlimited license sales in an effort to increase bear hunting. And in 2019, more than 25,000 people hunted for black bears in Colorado. Another animal that can be trophy hunted in Colorado are bobcats. And trophy hunters in Colorado can kill bobcats using pretty much all of the different cruelest methods, such as trapping, baiting, hounds, artificial lights, and electronic calls. The traps that can still be used in Colorado include cage and box traps that keep the animal alive theoretically until the hunter comes back to kill them. But even those live traps are still cruel and they have significant welfare issues. During the 2016 hunting season, which is the most current data that Colorado Parks and Wildlife has publicly available, more than 1,800 bobcats were trophy hunted and trapped in the state, and there's no limits on the number of bobcats that hunters can kill in Colorado. And bobcats, they only weigh approximately 10 to 30 pounds. They're shy and elusive. They go out of their way to avoid people. But they're still killed for nothing more than their fur or for a trophy, like most native carnivores. Nobody's going out to shoot a bobcat to put food on the table, which just really demonstrates how unnecessary this practice is. And then there's no wolf hunting in Colorado, but there is wolf hunting in other Western states. So in Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming, wolves are no longer protected under the Federal Endangered Species Act. and over 4,500 wolves, which unfortunately includes many pups, have been killed by trophy hunters and trappers in this region just since 2011. During the 2018-2019 season alone, nearly 700 wolves were killed in just these 3 states. The regulations governing wolf trophy hunting and trapping in those states are becoming increasingly lax because state agencies basically just kowtow to fear-mongering and politics rather than listening to actual science. So an example of this is that Idaho recently just increased the number of wolves that a single individual can kill to 30. And they also expanded wolf trophy hunting seasons to 11 to 12 months a year on both public and private land. So neither Idaho nor Montana have a statewide quota. And while Wyoming regulates one hunting season and imposes a quota in an area that's adjacent to Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Parks, the state still allows unregulated wolf killing in the remaining 85% of the state. And here, trophy hunters and trappers can kill wolves year-round using any method. And right now, Wyoming is also seeking comments on a proposal that would increase the wolf quota in the one small area of the state where they do limit killing by 50%. And in all 3 states, both nursing mothers and their pups are fair game to be killed. And this, unfortunately, includes the famous and much beloved wolves in Yellowstone National Park, who, if they just happen to, step across the invisible boundary of the park into one of those states, they could just have their lives cut short by a single individual that just wants bragging rights by killing a wolf. Now, in Colorado, earlier this year, Colorado Parks and Wildlife did confirm that at least 6 wolves now reside in the northwest part of the state. So while lone wolves have previously traveled through Colorado, this is likely the first time that a pack of wolves has called the state home since the 1930s, which is pretty exciting. And wolves in Colorado still remain protected as endangered species at both the state and federal levels. And the Rocky Mountain Wolf Action Fund has even collected enough signatures to put the issue of wolf reintroduction on the ballot for this November. So if you want more information on that initiative, we urge you to visit wolfactionfund.org. Again, that's wolfactionfund.org. And now that you've gotten a background on trophy hunting, I'll turn it over to Katie Stennis, who will talk about wildlife killing contests.
Thank you, Sam. Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Stennis. I am the Wildlife Protection Manager at HSUS. So killing contests, what are they? They're little-known blood sports similar to dogfighting or cockfighting, which have already been outlawed in every single state. But killing contests are legal in almost every single state. They're organized events where participants are competing for prizes, which is usually cash or weapons, sometimes even AR-15s, for killing the most or the largest animals within a specified time period. They could also be judged by a point system, like 10 points per coyote, 5 per bobcat, 3 per fox, and so on. Or even by body parts or appearance, such as the mangiest mutt, the biggest ears, or the prettiest female. This photo here was taken by our Illinois State Director, Mark Ayers, at a Southern Illinois killing contest a few years ago. Please note that we're not talking about highly regulated hunting of deer and other game species that are protected by closed seasons and bag limits and strict penalties for poaching. In some cases, deer and other species that are hunted under those strict regulations may then be entered into something like a big buck contest or a biggest rack competition to be judged for prizes. But this is really different from the random mass killing of unprotected species for cash and prizes. The HSUS has conducted several undercover investigations of killing contests across the country, and we're about to show you a video from our investigation of a coyote killing contest that was sponsored by the Oregon Farm Bureau in 2019. And please be advised that this video contains graphic images. We also investigated a killing contest in Maryland in 2020 that targeted red fox and gray foxes and raccoons, as shown here. So we also investigated a contest in New York and New Jersey in 2018. And the objects that you see in the mouths of the coyotes and foxes here are markers that are distributed by contest organizers right before the start of the event to discourage cheating. And some contest organizers also threaten to take body temperatures of the animals that they brought in because they claim participants will try to cheat by picking up roadkill coyotes and sticking them in the freezer until the next contest. They've also threatened to make contest participants submit to a lie detector test. These photos are from a killing contest in Sullivan County, New York, just a few months ago. This is billed as one of the largest in New York State and also covers 5 counties in Pennsylvania. The coyotes were found tossed inside and outside a dumpster after they were weighed for prizes. And this contest was in early February when female coyotes tend to be pregnant. One of the contest participants, when talking about a heavy female killed in the contest, told our investigator, quote, "She might be right full of babies too, you know." He went on to tell the investigator that an obviously pregnant female coyote had been cut open at the event and, quote, "the babies already had hair on them. They were ready, you know." So we found the species that are listed here are most often targeted in killing contests across the US. And the first 3, coyotes, foxes, and bobcats are the most common. And in some cases, killing contests might even target mountain lions, especially in Texas, where mountain lions are unprotected. And even wolves are targeted in a few states. There's several types of killing contests. The most common are those that take place over the weekend. They usually start on a Friday or Saturday, and participants will kill the animals through Sunday, and then they'll gather at a bar or a sportsman's club to weigh and count the bodies of the animals. Then they'll distribute prizes and take photos next to the bloodied animals, and then they'll celebrate over beer and food. And this photo here shows a scale that was used to weigh dead coyotes at a killing contest in Illinois. Other contests are sponsored by state wildlife agencies, such as the Georgia Coyote Challenge. And then other contests are photo only, where participants just send in photos of the animals they've killed to be judged for prizes. So this map is a current snapshot of killing contests in the United States. As you can see, they're numerous across the country. We've not found organized contests in some states, including Connecticut, Rhode Island, Delaware, Alaska, and Mississippi, which isn't to say that they're not happening in those states. It's just that we haven't seen them advertised. A lot of these contest organizers are bringing their contests underground, so it's entirely possible that they're still happening. Please let us know if you find any in those states. The red markers here show contests that target native carnivores like coyotes and foxes. And then the brown markers show contests for non-target non-carnivores like squirrels and prairie dogs. And then the yellow markers are contests in states that have already banned the events, which I'll talk more about in a minute. So one reason that we and others oppose killing contests is that they're so damaging to the reputation of responsible hunters. An increasing number of wildlife management professionals and agencies are speaking out against killing contests, not just because they're not backed by any science-based wildlife management principles, but also because it's such a terrible look for hunting. And this is a quote from Jim Posowitz, who wrote the book on ethical hunting. In the past 3 years, state agencies in Vermont, Arizona, Massachusetts, and Colorado have made remarkably similar statements about how much damage these killing contests can inflict on the overall reputation of hunting in the US. And subsequently, after making these statements, all 4 states banned killing contests. Killing contests are fundamentally inhumane. This really isn't an anti-hunting issue. There's no doubt that people are well aware of and are supportive of their state's hunting tradition, but they also recognize that there's a difference between subsistence hunting and the cruel, unsporting, and wasteful slaughter of vital wildlife species for nothing more than cash and prizes. The bottom photo here was taken from the Coyote for Kids hunting tournament in Illinois, and a lot of these contests are trying to bring in young people to increase hunting participation in the state. Many scientists and wildlife management professionals and hunting groups have made statements about how ineffective killing contests and predator control really are. And we have a full listing of those comments in our toolkit, but these are just a few examples. So this is a map of states that have banned or restricted killing contests. So far there have been 6 just since 2014. Sometimes killing contests are banned by state legislatures, which was the case in Vermont and New Mexico. And then in other cases, they're banned by the state wildlife management commissions, including in California, Arizona, Massachusetts, and Colorado. Just last month, Colorado actually banned killing contests. So each state is different in how it approaches such a ban, and your HSUS state director will be glad to help advise you on that. Currently, the Washington Fish and Wildlife Commission is considering a proposed regulatory ban, and we're pretty hopeful they'll pass that this year. And then we're also very hopeful that bills in Oregon and Maryland will come back successfully in 2021. And bills are also pending in New York, New Hampshire, and New Jersey. But I think they'll be postponed until 2021 due to COVID. Please check with your HSUS state director about what efforts are already underway in your state to ban killing contests. And later in the webinar, you're gonna get to meet our Colorado state director, Alvin Royal. Now, Haley will talk about the myths and facts about native carnivores.
Thanks, Katie. So my name is Haley Stewart. I am a wildlife protection manager with the Humane Society of the United States. And I'm going to talk to you, like Katie said, about the myths and facts about these animals and why these practices happen. You might be asking yourself by now, why do we allow trophy hunting and killing contests to continue in states across the US? Well, unfortunately, but maybe not all that surprisingly, many myths still surround native carnivores. And these myths are often used to justify the widespread killing of these animals. Really driving the persecution of native carnivores is the long-held but fundamentally false idea that carnivore populations need to be managed by trophy hunting, trapping, killing contests, and other methods. State wildlife agencies often attempt to manage native carnivores using the same model they use for game species like deer and elk. The objective for these other animals is to maintain a continual surplus for hunting and trapping so that people can recreationally hunt these animals. In populations of game species, they're also often artificially inflated by game managers to satisfy the demand of the hunting lobby, and then licenses are sold to manage their numbers. So they keep the populations really high and then sell licenses to keep the populations under control. But native carnivores, obviously, they're not herd animals and they manage their own numbers just fine. Their populations are really limited by the availability of their prey as well as their own intricate social structures and territorial nature. They don't require this external human management to control their population numbers. In this myth that native carnivore populations must be managed, it persists largely because the historical role of wildlife agencies to oversee management of wildlife has been done so for the interest of hunters. Traditionally, native carnivores in the US, they were seen as a problem that needed to be eradicated. For large carnivores like wolves, grizzly bears, and mountain lions, unfortunately, that's resulted in the loss of these animals throughout much of their historic range. While wildlife management has shifted in recent decades, state wildlife agencies still really continue to manage native carnivores almost entirely for their use to humans as commodities and as pests that needed to be eradicated because they're viewed as a threat and because they prey on animals that people like to hunt, such as deer. Native carnivores are still managed this way because private hunting and ranching interests oversee the governing bodies that determine hunting regulations. And this is something that Sam touched on before. These governing bodies are referred to as wildlife commissions or wildlife boards, and they're made up of individuals that are appointed by the governor. They're not elected by the voters. They're typically made up of hunters, trappers, and ranchers. And this results in wildlife agencies that continue to manage all of the state's native carnivores for the benefit of hunters and ranchers, despite changing attitudes among the general public who want to see these animals protected now more than ever before. Despite the fact that native carnivore populations largely self-regulate, they continue to be relentlessly persecuted. For example, in some states, bobcats and coyotes have no protections whatsoever. So they can be killed at any time by any method and without limit. In some Western states, coyotes are still referred to as varmints, pests, and even vermin. And in Eastern states, some actually refer to coyotes as invasive and non-native, and that's because the original top carnivores in that region, like wolves and cougars, they were eradicated by humans and pushed out of their native habitat in eastern states. So to fill that void, coyotes have migrated eastward and down from Canada, and they've actually provided really immense benefits to help maintain healthy ecosystems in eastern states. Unfortunately, fear-mongering is also used to promote this narrative that these species, if they aren't trophy hunted and controlled, they're going to overrun our communities and decimate our deer herds and kill huge numbers of livestock. Media outlets and even state wildlife agencies often play on people's fears unnecessarily to the detriment of ongoing efforts to help people learn how to coexist with these animals. The language that wildlife agencies and media use to describe incidents involving native carnivores can influence how the general public perceives these animals. For example, in this news article in the slide you see here, the Michigan Department of Natural Resources describes the crimes a man in Chippewa County, Michigan was charged with. So notice that they say the 18 wolves were harvested, whereas the bald eagles are described as having been killed. And euphemisms like harvest soften the fact that these animals were illegally harvested and suggest that wolves should just be able to be trophy hunted and harvested like other species. A common rationale for killing of wild native carnivores is the longstanding but really untrue belief that it's going to somehow protect domestic livestock. In fact, records from state and federal wildlife agencies show that this rationale just does not hold up. So in 2019, we released 3 comprehensive reports that looked at livestock loss data collected by the US Department of Agriculture, or we call them USDA. So according to this USDA data, livestock producers lose 9 times more cattle and sheep to things like health problems and weather than to all predators combined. And research shows that indiscriminately killing native carnivores is not an effective way to reduce livestock losses. In fact, it can actually exacerbate conflicts with livestock by disrupting the sensitive social structures that native carnivores really rely on to manage their communities. So for example, adult male mountain lions ward off or even kill younger males who stray into their territory. These young males are much more likely to be involved in conflicts with humans, pets, and livestock because they're inexperienced hunters and they're looking for an easy prey. Adult males will protect their territory, and if they reside near human communities, they can act like a fence, keeping these younger males away. But when a trophy hunter kills that large male mountain lion, they break down that fence, and that results in increased conflict. So now we're going to share a short video that we produced, which better explains why rampant trophy hunting of mountain lions is so harmful and can actually increase conflicts.
All right, let's go see what they got.
Trophy hunting is really just, it's any hunting practice where a trophy, a wildlife trophy, an animal's body part is collected at the culmination of the hunt.
Large carnivores, especially those iconic species like gray wolves or grizzly bears, can bring substantial economic benefits to the local areas in which those animals reside. One study conducted back in 2007 estimated that wolves alone bring between $24 and $49 million to the greater Yellowstone area in terms of economic benefits. So if we're removing these animals from these areas around the park where they draw in tourists, then you potentially are losing out on that very reason why people are coming to the park in the first place.
For the mother mountain lion, it's a matter of life. It's a matter of survival and subsistence, versus for the trophy hunter, it's a matter of pleasure, recreation. The one clearly outweighs the other. My God, we're chopping off animals' body parts and putting them on our walls, and there's just something so disturbed and disturbing about that.
These cougars are self-regulatory. Disrupting their social system causes these massive cascade effects. You know, we have immigrants coming in and we have depredations going up. We have human complaints going up. Pets are being killed. Threatened and endangered game animals like caribou are being decimated. And all of this because of over-harvesting. I mean, it's really quite surprising. You know, everyone thought that killing cougars in large numbers would solve all these problems, but it actually caused all the problems.
Since 2011, the number of big game hunters, including mountain lion hunters, has dropped by more than 20%. While states typically charge a nominal fee to trophy hunt mountain lions, the economic reality is that the majority of conservation funding in the United States comes from sources other than trophy hunting. Mountain lion guides and outfitters charge trophy hunters several $1,000s per hunt. States retain few of the available revenues for maintaining the conservation of mountain lions for the people.
Animals like cougars and bears and wolves are very different. They haven't evolved to be killed by anything other than themselves, so they're self-regulatory. So any additional mortality simply drives the population down, so it's not conservation. So if you kill predators, you're just adding to the natural mortality rate, causing a population decline. So that can't be conservation, right? It's not conserving anything. All it is driving populations down.
They're not commodities. They're not toys and trinkets for us to just go and have our way with and put their paw on our tables. They have their own interests in living their lives. That's why trophy hunting shouldn't even be on the table.
So we believe that the facts are pretty clear. Killing mountain lions and other native carnivores must no longer be the go-to approach for responding to conflicts. Employing common sense non-lethal deterrence and altering livestock husbandry practices to promote coexistence are much more effective and humane strategies for reducing the rare conflicts that do occur. And there's this growing effort across the US to help ranchers, hobby farmers, and other livestock operators adopt non-lethal deterrence and strategies to protect their animals from native carnivores. And these measures prevent conflicts from occurring in the first place. That protects both livestock and wildlife from unnecessary death. Another common myth is that killing native carnivores is going to boost prey species numbers. So I mentioned this before, like deer and elk. This argument is really common among deer and elk hunters who blame native carnivores for perceived reductions in prey populations. However, research shows that weather, disease, and habitat play a much greater role in determining deer and other game species population sizes. Killing native carnivores does not boost deer and other prey populations for the long term because it really doesn't address those primary causes for their declines. Killing these animals, it only serves as a temporary band-aid and doesn't provide a solution to the problem. Numerous recent studies demonstrate that predator removal actions generally had no effect in the long term on prey populations. Instead of killing native carnivores, prey populations benefit from more effective actions such as protecting winter habitat and migration corridors, as well as preventing interactions with livestock and captive wildlife, because that will prevent the spread of disease between animals, and reducing human disturbance and habitat fragmentation in key areas. Meanwhile, and this is really important for folks to understand, deer hunting numbers continue to be consistently high across the country. Killing native carnivores is not only ineffective at boosting prey populations, it can actually be really harmful to them. Native carnivores play a really critical role in suppressing the prevalence of disease in prey species, especially chronic wasting disease, or we refer to it as CWD. This might be something you've heard of before. It's an epidemic plaguing prey species populations like deer and elk. And folks think that it possibly started in northeastern Colorado, and it has continued to spread across North America. It's an extremely deadly disease plaguing these populations. And studies have shown that predation can limit or even prevent the transmission of CWD and other diseases in prey species. Carnivores like wolves and mountain lions, they'll often select for prey if they appear impaired by malnutrition, age, or disease. In fact, carnivores are better capable of removing these sick prey from the environment compared to human hunters who tend to seek the largest, fittest deer and elk. And as we mentioned previously, healthy ecosystems need native carnivores. Their feeding activities increase biological diversity. For example, they protect fragile riparian ecosystems, which benefit a huge host of species. And smaller carnivores like coyotes, bobcats, and foxes can help to provide ecosystem balance and control rodent populations. And this is really beneficial for things like preventing the spread of Lyme disease and protecting crops from rodents. Protecting and conserving native carnivores has ripple effects throughout their natural communities, and the result is greater biodiversity and healthier, sustainable ecosystems. Our last myth is that killing native carnivores protects people and pets, but native carnivore conflicts with humans are extraordinarily rare, and they're typically caused by provocation. A person is many more times likely to die from a lightning strike than from a native carnivore. And this is really important. Seeing a native carnivore in their natural habitat is not a cause for concern, and it's in no way a reasonable justification for trophy hunting and killing contests. And this is going to come up later when we talk about the current West Slope Mountain Lion Management Plan. Moreover, there's no evidence that trophy hunting, predator control, and killing contests make people safer. In fact, just like conflicts with livestock, conflicts with humans may actually be exacerbated by intense persecution because it disrupts that sensitive social structure of mountain lions and other native carnivores. So instead, what we need to do is learn how to better coexist with wildlife and employ non-lethal strategies and tools that keep animals away from our communities in order to protect them. For example, in Steamboat Springs, they just passed an ordinance that's going to transition all of their residents to bear-resistant trash cans, and we really applaud Steamboat for doing this. Simple steps like this can and do save lives of wildlife. So now we want to help you turn all of this information into action by achieving these objectives. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Amanda, who's going to talk with you about what you can do in your own state to protect wildlife from trophy hunting and killing contests.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. Thanks, Haley. My name is Amanda White, and I'm a Wildlife Protection Manager with the Humane Society of the United States. So one of the most important things that you can do is to join with us in working with legislators and state wildlife commissions to urge them to implement better policies to protect America's native carnivores from trophy hunting and wildlife killing contests, while also opposing any new proposals to expand trophy hunting in those states. We also want to work with you on the passage of laws and regulations to ban wildlife killing contests in your state. This image that you see on the screen is from a killing contest in Maryland, and horrible images like this one led to a bill being introduced to ban them. That bill passed the Maryland House by a landslide vote in early March, and was headed to the Senate when the legislature unfortunately adjourned early due to COVID-19. But we'll be back in 2021. And we'll follow up this webinar with links to our toolkits that have detailed information on how you can join with your HSUS state director in banning trophy hunting and wildlife killing contests in your state. In addition to a good offense, you need a good defense. We are always on the lookout for new bills or regulations that would weaken existing protections for wildlife, open up new trophy hunting, trap seasons, or wildlife killing contests, or would prevent citizens from protecting wildlife. For example, and this has been mentioned a couple of times now, the Colorado Parks and Wildlife is currently working on an updated management plan to guide mountain lion management throughout Western Colorado. This plan has a number of positive aspects, including placing much needed limits on total human-caused mortality of mountain lions, as well as a secondary limit on the number of adult female mountain lions that can be trophy hunted. It is a much needed update to the agency's current management plan that is nearly 2 decades old. For these reasons, we are generally supportive of CPW's efforts to adopt an updated mountain lion management plan. Unfortunately, there are a few aspects of the plan that we oppose. For example, the plan is solely focused on managing mountain lions with the use of trophy hunting and will allow for high levels of killing near Glenwood Springs area as a result of increased sightings. While we understand and take seriously any public safety concerns, the science tells us that this management strategy is likely to be ineffective and could even make conflicts worse, as Kelly discussed earlier. CPW is also proposing to allow the use of electronic calls in select areas, a tool that is currently prohibited for hunting mountain lions and is considered unsporting. The HSUS and our allies are working to improve the plan and could absolutely use your help. CPW will soon bring the plan to Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission for consideration, and we'll need your voice to speak up for mountain lions during the process. We'll share a fact sheet with all of you after this webinar and be sure to update all of you on how to engage on this important issue. So when harmful trophy hunting policies such as those on the screen appear, please contact your HSUS state director for help in defeating them. And our toolkits also have additional resources that we'll be sending out after this webinar. So now I'll pass it back to Jill to talk about other ways that you can take action.
Thanks, Amanda. Now, one of the things that we could use your help with is passing resolutions to oppose trophy hunting and wildlife killing contests. And unlike an ordinance or a bill, a resolution is simply used to express a non-binding position or opinion of a legislative body. In the past 3 years, several have passed in Dane County, Wisconsin, Yavapai County, Coconino County, Pima County, Arizona, and in the towns of Dewey, Humboldt, Tucson, and Flagstaff, Arizona, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and St. Paul, Minnesota. So why are they effective? They demonstrate growing public support for an issue. Because they're non-binding, they allow politicians and local governments to take a position on something without really expending too much political capital. And they also generate media coverage on an issue. This was an article about the passage of a resolution in the town of Dewey, Humboldt, Arizona, which had been home to the infamous Santa Sleigh, S-L-A-Y, coyote killing tournament each Christmas. And after they passed a resolution, this Arizona Republic writer explained why hunters should join animal advocates in this effort. She said, most hunters have a code of ethics that include the hunt should be a fair chase, it should not involve wanton waste, and it should not be about monetizing wildlife. And then finally, resolutions are building blocks for statewide action, as we saw in Arizona in 2019. So we encourage you to consider working on resolutions and helping your own community take a stand against trophy hunting and wildlife killing contests. And we're more than happy to help you in that effort. So the HSUS has partnered with Project Coyote to form the National Coalition to End Wildlife Killing Contests, which you can see at the web address on your screen. We now have more than 40 member groups, and we work on national and regional issues pertaining to killing contests. If you know a wildlife focus group in your state that might like to join, please contact your HSUS state director. We also urge you to help find killing contests in your area and then work with other advocates to encourage their cancellation. These are examples in the past few years of contests in Vermont, New York State, and Idaho that canceled. You can contact us or your HSUS state director for a detailed listing of wildlife killing contests that are going on in your state. And as always, our toolkits have detailed instructions on what to do. We also ask that you urge sponsors to withdraw their support from trophy hunting and killing contests. Now, granted, most sponsors of these contests are manufacturers and sellers of weapons, ammunition, predator killing equipment like calling devices, night vision devices, scopes, spotlights, etc. But on this slide, you can see that two of the sponsors of the Utah Youth Coyote Hunt, which gave away rifles to age groups as young as 5 years old, were the mainstream companies of Nikon and Swarovski, which is famous for its crystals. So they also make hunting equipment like spotting scopes and binoculars and other equipment. So while you can expect that maybe the people who manufacture the weapons and the ammunition and other equipment might not be so willing to listen to the public about this, these mainstream companies might very well care what the public has to say about it. And of course, many killing contests are sponsored by local businesses, bars, restaurants, hardware stores, even chambers of commerce or convention and visitors bureaus. And they probably do care a lot what the public has to say, along with organizations like VFW, American Legion, 4-H, and others that have sponsored killing contests or trophy hunting events in the past. So you can find our toolkits at these addresses on your screen, humanesociety.org/trophy hunting toolkit, or humanesociety.org/killing contests toolkit. Note, killing contests is plural there. And we also have a toolkit to help you ban wild animal circuses and performing animal acts in your community. And that's at humanesociety.org/circus toolkit. So now I'm going to turn it over to our Colorado State Director, Aubin Royal, to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Jill, and thanks to all of you for being here tonight. We really appreciate it. So my name is Aubin Royal, and I'm the Colorado State Director. I just wanted to pop in and introduce myself, and thank you to the wildlife team. This presentation is absolutely awesome. I'm based here in Denver, Colorado, and for those of you living here, I just wanted you to know that we have an awesome volunteer leadership team. There are people that stay extra involved on these issues, and I'd love to help you work on animal advocacy issues here in the state. I also work on farm animals, wildlife, companion animals, kind of everything. And if we don't work on it, then I can probably connect you with someone who does. So please reach out to me if you're interested in more information on our volunteer opportunities or animal issues in the state. And if you don't live in Colorado, that's the website you can go to find out who your state director is, and they can connect you with the issues and get you involved. So I think I'm going to pass it back to Jill.
Thank you, Aubin. So now we have a few minutes left for questions about our webinar. If you have a question, please look for the Q&A button on your screen and type in your question. If we don't have time to get to all of your questions before the hour runs out, please submit it to wildlife@humanesociety.org, and we'll do our best to get back to you as soon as possible. So Sam, with that, if you have any questions you'd like to share?
Yeah, we've got a few so far. So I think this will be for Jill, either you or Katie. And the question is, has there ever been an effort to pass federal legislation to ban wildlife killing contests?
Yes, there let me try that again. There is a federal bill in its beginning stages now that would prohibit wildlife killing contests on federal lands. Like I said, it's just in the process now of drafting and amendments and looking for co-sponsors. And that's really all the information I have at this point, but be on the lookout soon for legislation to be introduced for a ban on killing contests on federal lands.
Yeah, and I can add, it is in the really early stages. We've been talking about it, but normally killing contests are kind of under the purview of state wildlife agencies or state legislatures. So that's usually how we get bans on certain practices. But since killing contests do frequently occur on federal public lands, especially Bureau of Land Management lands in the West, we do kind of have an avenue for a federal bill. So it'd only ban them on federal public lands, but I think that could help cut down on a lot of contests in the West, especially.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. The next question I have, there's a couple questions on this kind of the same issue, so I'm going to try and merge them into one question, and hopefully it'll answer it for several of you that have asked this. And the question relates to the makeup of state wildlife commissions and state wildlife agencies. So commissions are overwhelmingly composed of hunters that consistently protect their customers, and wildlife agencies continue to kind of cater to hunters and ranchers. And basically the question is, how will trophy hunting ever change with the fact that most Colorado citizens are against trophy hunting, but the makeup of the decision makers does not reflect that? And it seems like we'll never really make progress on trophy hunting and killing contests unless there's a major change in all the states on commission composition. So I'm not sure who wants to answer that.
Well, I can jump in at first. It is slowly changing. There have been bills introduced in a couple of states, New Hampshire and I think Vermont, that would try to provide more balanced representation from non-consumptive users on these state commissions, or would, for example, remove the requirement in some states for having a hunting license before you're able to be on a commission. So those bills are kind of slow going, but the advocates in those states, they keep coming back every year and trying again. And I think ultimately they'll be successful in that. I can tell you in Michigan, for example, recently the HSUS Michigan State Council wrote to Governor Whitmer asking her to, because she does appoint members to the Natural Resources Commission in Michigan, they wrote to the governor with a very detailed letter asking her to appoint more representatives from wildlife watchers, from wildlife rehabbers, from just concerned citizens, from citizens who enjoy the wild by watching wildlife instead of killing them. And so, that's something that you might consider doing in your own state. We'll be happy to help you with that. Write to your governor or whoever it is that appoints the members of these commissions. Remind them that hunting registration, hunting numbers are continuing to decline in the U.S., and wildlife watchers are increasing rapidly. And they should have a seat at the table in how their state's wildlife is managed. I don't know if anybody else wants to add to that.
I'll just add that that our teams at the HSUS, we're often involved in coalitions throughout many states that are looking at things like commission reform or finding appointees who could, speak up for that non-consumptive user voice, and providing recommendations to governors of who we would like to see appointed to commissions. And so I think engaging in that way and providing advocacy in terms of who's governing and overseeing wildlife regulations is really, really vital.
And just one more, as we mentioned earlier, state wildlife commissions are starting to speak out on certain practices. As we saw just in 2019, both the Arizona Game and Fish Commission and Massachusetts Fisheries and Wildlife Board were the ones who initiated and passed the bans on wildlife killing contests in their states, because they are so acutely aware of the image that they project, the very bad image they project on hunting overall. And they want to make sure that citizens understand this is not what they consider hunting, and it's not a good representation of the sportsmen and the sportswomen in their state.
And also just really,
in Colorado, Parks and Wildlife too. Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
Sam, maybe, I don't know if you're going to continue on what Jill said. I had something else.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say along those same lines really quickly, state wildlife agencies and commissions are also both very cognizant of the fact that hunting numbers are going down, public attitudes are shifting, and change is slowly coming. You know, they're a bit resistant to it, but it is something that they are discussing and they are aware of. So it might take some time, but I do think that change will happen.
Yeah, I was going to say that Sam and I have both been to a conference called the annual Fish and State Wildlife Management Agency. I can't remember actually what it's called, but
Fish and Wildlife Agency.
Yeah, and like Sam said, they're super aware of this problem that they're having, and major topics of discussion were how they can become more relevant amongst their whole constituency. And they've come up with like this thing called the relevancy roadmap, and you can find it online. And it kind of like talks about all the issues that they are facing. And I mean, they definitely recognize it's a problem, and they're talking about what they can do. But it'll be a while, but at least it's on their radar.
All right, thanks, guys. So another question is that the subject of the call is really protecting Western wildlife from trophy hunting and killing contests. So the question is, what is the action that we want them to take if they live in Colorado, for example? So in addition to just downloading the toolkit, what would be our suggested action plan for them?
So this is Haley. I can chime in real quickly, and maybe Aubin wants to add to it. But I would say, you know, right off the bat, we would love for you to engage on that West Slope Mountain Lion Management Plan. So just to give you all an update on that, I think it's going to be going to the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission for a hearing in July. And leading up to that, they're going to have a public process where people can submit their own comments on the plan. And speak up for wildlife, speak up for mountain lions. And so like we said, we're going to be sending you guys some fact sheets and some talking points, but you can always reach out to me if you have any questions about that management plan. We would love for you to submit written comments as well as testify at the hearing, and just tell the commission what you're thinking and how you feel about the ongoing trophy hunting of mountain lions in Colorado.
Yeah, and you can reach out to us at that website on the screen, or the email address, if you want additional details as well. And then I think we have time for one more question, and the last one is, so for Jill or Katie, when the contests are outlawed in any given state, does that include sovereign land?
You mean tribal lands?
I think so, yes.
I think so, yeah.
Yes, it would also include tribal lands, but that is, I have to look into that more, but that's a very good question. I will find out. I do think though that we need to wrap it up now. We're out of time, but if you have questions that didn't get answered, again, please send them to wildlife@humanesociety.org, and we'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. We'll also be sending everyone a follow-up survey to get your feedback on this webinar. So keep an eye out for that in your inbox. And finally, a recording of this webinar will soon be posted on the HSUS events page, which is humanesociety.org/events, for you to view at any time. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we wish you all a safe and healthy evening.